My name is Susan Buell, and I'm honored again to introduce my good friend and your speaker and my teacher, Judy Taylor. Many of you know Judy through her work, and I know that there are people in this room who've been studying with Judy for a long time too. So, and some of you are lucky enough to have her work in your home, so that's pretty fantastic too. I do have to mention, because this has been such a not horrible day, or 2 days, that we're living in turbulent times right now, and sometimes I feel that hate and cruelty are winning. And how does this connect to Judy Taylor? And what does artwork, painting, music, sculpture have to do with difficult times? Maybe we're softened, or provoked, or comforted, or terrified. And I just use an example because I was honored to see this when we were in Dublin in June. We saw the Caravaggio, The Taking of Christ. And if you don't know that painting, I would suggest that you look it up, because for me, it is now. It is so relevant to what's happening now. Creating art, though, losing ourselves in our project, is an outlet for our feelings of hopelessness or anger or joy or bringing back good memories. And it's also a time to zone out, because you're so into what you're doing that, everything else doesn't exist. So what a lovely thing. I am very grateful for the years that I've known Judy and worked with Judy. I don't practice enough, she'll tell you, or if you do. I am not an accomplished person. However, when you think of where I started to where I am now, I am an accomplished person, and I thank Judy for her attitude of inclusion, her attitude always of support, of kindness, no competition in the group. You just do what you can, and she gently critiques it. It's just amazing. So also, though, I have to do a commercial message for the library. So the library, the art auction and the art show, which are major fundraisers for the library, start on August 1. There's a reception, I think 1:30 to 2:30 in the library. If you are an artist or you have work, photography, sculpture, knitting, stitching, painting, of course, drawings, charcoal, please consider offering it for sale in the auction. Some artists choose to share their winnings, give all their winnings to the library. Some choose to split 50-50 to the library and to the artist. So I hope that you will participate that. The art will be displayed for a month, and as I said, it's a major fundraiser. And we're still accepting pieces. Also, Christina Baker Klein, whom I'm sure many of you have heard of, she will be speaking as a library event, but at the high school, because the number of people that will want to hear her will be large. So that's next Tuesday. And then next Thursday, Kneisel Hall is performing at St. John Church across the street, also a library event. And you'll have to register for that and,
No.
For St. John, no, you do not have to register for Knightville Hall.
okay,
Nope.
how about that? All right, so without further ado,
Please go fast. Come early.
yeah, there are 100 seats in St. John, I'll just say that. Thank you. Judy Taylor.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for showing up. Thank you, Susan, for another wonderful introduction and commentary. Does this sound okay? Okay. All right, so this is a huge subject. You know, I didn't even know, well, I really didn't know. It's like, it's like trying to find your way in a foreign city and you have no, whatever those things are. Google Maps, nothing. You're still relying on your instinct and you go down one little road, and then you go down another little road, and before you know it, you're completely lost and 6 hours into the drive. This is kind of how it is. I would go to a painting and I just went down these endless rabbit holes and couldn't do that. So forgive me if I flash through some things, and this is just where it's gonna be at. So everybody's probably, I don't know if everybody's familiar with all three of these artists. Of course, most people are probably familiar with Singer Sargent. And then there's Anders Zorn, Swedish artist, and Joaquín Sorolla, Spanish artist. Interestingly, they all are relatively the same, close to the same age. Anders Zorn was born in 1860. Sargent was born in 1863, and Zorn was born in 1860. I said that, Zorn. When was Sorolla? Sorolla was born in, well, my sister printed these off and she had. He was 3 years behind Sargent. Okay, so all in the same thing. And I'm going to talk about the things that they had in common that we really don't know. So I'm going to go to the next slide and show you. So the first here, this is Sargent, that's Zorn, and that's Sorolla. So take a good look at these because they painted very similarly, but like there's distinctive issues with each of their styles. So Singer Sargent, Anders Zorn, and Joaquín Sorolla. Sargent never married. He lived to be 1923 is when he died. He was born in Florence to American parents. His father was a physician and they were fairly well-to-do. So they decided to live in Europe and raise their children in Europe, Sargent and his sister. So Sargent from the beginning, being born in Florence, had formative training. His mother was a very accomplished amateur artist. And so she would give him lessons. And also they attended many, many museum exhibitions, literary salons. He really was raised with to become an artist, as actually all three of these were. He didn't return to the United States till he was 20. So he made his reputation and he studied, all of them studied classically. And if you don't know what I mean by that, they went to the salons. Sargent went to the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. And then he also studies with Carolus Duran. And one thing about Carolus Duran, he was a devotee of Velázquez. Velázquez was a Spanish painter. And when he went to Spain, Sargent's teacher, Carolus Duran, as all of these artists did, when they went into the Prado, that was it. That, Velázquez was it. And that's what they really studied, all of them. Have you been to the Prado? Yeah, it's quite a remarkable museum, and I feel the same way that they did about Velázquez. So I'm going to keep repeating that lineage from Velázquez, and Manet was very influenced by Velázquez also, down to this. So Carlos Duran became a devotee of Velázquez when he went back to his studio, where he had about 18 young male students. He just taught about Velázquez and painting directly from life, and talked about light, form. So Sargent had that classic training at the École des Beaux-Arts. They copied the cast and they drew before they even went to painting. So it was, and anatomy, all of the serious lines of study. Zorn was born in Mora, Sweden. He was born to a lower class family of his, I don't want to use that terminology. His father was a beer brewer who left the family after he was born. So Zorn was raised by his mother and his grandparents, and he had a very happy childhood. They devoted themselves to him. And, he had this ability to, I don't know, he really knew that he wanted to be a painter. And he started just carving wood, as a lot of people in Morris, Sweden, carved wood, really beautifully. So he had this kind of a direction in him. And then when he was 18, he too went off to Paris. He went to Stockholm and he attended the Royal Swedish Academy, which was another classical atelier where students worked from the cast, worked from life. And so he started to make his name there because he was so good and so talented, and he started to dress to the nines. He was like, I need to get into this society because I need portrait commissions and I need to make a living. So he really navigated that, and then he went to London and he became very, very well known in his lifetime, as did Sargent. Sargent had a little bit more controversy involved, but anyway, see, I'm already getting way off track. Zorn, because they're so interesting. So he started making his way with the class, and once he got a commission with his name just traveled around. So we have the Swedish Royal Academy, and then going to London. That's where he started to make his reputation. And then on the far right is Joaquín Sorolla, who grew up in Valencia, was born in Valencia, Spain. And he was from a fairly moneyed class, but he also went to the academy and started making his reputation very, very early. He also got a number of portrait commissions, but he painted outside. He painted his family. He was a very close family man and his wife, and they would go to Valencia and he would paint the children on the beach. So you're going to see a lot of beach paintings, but we're going to compare those kind of things with things. So he's outside painting. Sargent and Zorn are in the studio painting, and then occasionally moving outdoors. Long subject. Okay. So this is Velázquez's most famous paintings, Las Meninas. Sorry, gotta catch my breath here. It's a huge painting. We don't know I don't know. I've been trying to figure out this painting for years. But you go into the Prado and it is just unbelievable to see this painting in life. You will never get it by seeing it from a photograph. It's so rich. This is Velázquez. He's painting, I think I've explained this painting before, but he's painting the princess, and these are her attendants and her nurses. Here's the king and queen, and there is, he's like head of the CIA in those times. on Oligares. So Velázquez looking out, is he painting the king and queen? And the children are watching it. The children have entered the room, and he created this composition. It's really, really hard to know what's going on, but it is a masterpiece. So I wanted to show a few close-ups so you can get an idea, if you look closely at some of the brushwork. Okay, I don't want pointers here. So, and the way light falls on the form, that's kind of what I want, and that's what I talk about when I'm starting to teach painting. Where you can always tell with these painting where the light is coming from, and the light falls in chunks. And then as the face of things turn away from the light, it turns into the shadow. That's pretty key on every one of these paintings. I just want you to kind of have an awareness of that as we move through the paintings. And I'm not going to talk a lot about brushwork, but I am going to comment that brushwork's become like a big thing, mark making, all these kind of terms that people are using to describe art, but you can't do this kind of brushwork unless you know what's underneath that, how that light is falling, and what is going on with the anatomy of the figure, everything, all that knowledge takes you into a space where you can do that brushwork. And I always rail about this, and it's an academic sport. Is anybody here a big golfer or big academic sport? Or these guys were the World Cup champions of painting. That is something that you want to get better at a game, you work it every day. You know, when you're painting, it is an eye-hand coordination sport. So in order to get to being able to flail a brush around in a way that accurately depicts the light, you have to have that muscle built up. It is a hard conversation. Nobody believes me, but it is true. And when I used to teach 8th grade boys, I tell them, you want to be better at sports, learn to draw. And they're like, yeah, right. But it's really, really true. And so these guys also, and when I say guys, there's women involved in this time period too. But they work their craft every single day. Okay, so from Velázquez, we have Sargent's Daughters of Edward Dubose, which is in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Because Sargent's looking at Velázquez and he's getting ideas of different compositional things with families, right? Different ways to make a composition. It's in some ways it's very similar to Las Meninas with the child in the front and these long verticals that are in the back, and Las Meninas, the stationary anchors the painting in the background. Light, where's the light coming from? Yeah. So, if you want to know how to carve out this apron, you need to know how that light runs and carves, light carves out short form. And that's what, here I go again, but that's what makes these paintings so viscerally pleasing to look at. It's not overwrought, but it's just accurate. The light is accurate. So that's some close-ups so you can see maybe some of the brushwork. So here we have John Singer Sargent, and here we have a Zorn painting. Okay. Brushwork, and I just look at the pinks and the oranges. So somebody asked me about mixing on a palette, and Zorn worked on created what's called the Zorn palette. And he had white, black, cadmium red light, and yellow ochre on his palette. From that palette, he could get all this. So it's a matter of learning complementary colors and working across here. It's a matter of learning how to mix values instead of putting a tube of paint down and a squirt of paint. So it's also, again, the practice, but this abstracted, these are all abstracted shapes put into a very pleasing composition and making a figurative painting, what's called a realistic or representational painting. But this abstraction in it is strong and it's really well composed. And this is and it's beautifully painted. And, this is what gets you when you go and look at a museum, in my opinion. So here we have two, and you can kind of see Zorn's yellow ochre in his palette as opposed to Sargent's. You're going to see that a lot. Okay, this is so Sargent went to the Prado and spent quite a long time copying Velázquez right from the paintings, which is what I do. I take people overseas and we work in the museums, not painting, but drawing. And there's nothing better and more fun than drawing from the master. It sounds so boring, but it really is so much fun. And so on the left is a detail from Velázquez, The Forge of Vulcan. This is when Apollo is coming down and telling Vulcan that his wife Athena is cheating on him with the god Mars. And this is Velázquez's copy of it. On the left is a copy, Sargent's copy of the face of Velázquez Aesop. He painted Aesop. And it's a full-length figure, but Sargent decides to do the face. Look at that carve on the cheekbone. So the anatomy underneath the cheekbones, the skull, the chin, all these, they all knew all about that, and you'd start to see that. When you have an awareness and you're looking at a painting and you have an awareness of the underside of that, the anatomy, how drapery falls on the anatomy, how it carves everything out, it really helps you appreciate the painting more. And when you sit in front of a painting and you draw it for 3 or 4 hours, you know, you never leave the museum tired. You leave the museum exhilarated. It's such a different experience than trying to see everything. Highly recommend. So this is a Velázquez, attributed to Velázquez. There's been some controversy. It's in the Cleveland Museum of Art of the Jester Calabasas. I think I'm botching that name. So Sargent was looking at this when he painted The Lady with the Rose. So Velázquez is aiding Sargent in his composition and choice of how the gesture is. It's always nice when you're doing a portrait to include the hands, because the hands say so much about the person. And with the hands in action, I think it animates the whole painting. So this gives Sargent an excuse to show her really beautiful hands holding a rose, which is probably symbolic of something. It's a beautiful painting. So on the left is Joaquín Sorolla, and on the right is John Singer Sargent. Look at the blacks. The blacks are all mixed blacks. They're mixed by understanding the palette. You understand how to mix a black that makes a black but has vibrancy to it. And then at the very end, you might slap a real black on, but that's just accent, because black and white used purely can kill a painting. So you vibrate that paint. And I just love how dark Sorolla got with this painting. But look at the light. So you see the light, the edge of the light on the table. We don't need to see all the way around the table. We just need to see the light. And that will put us right in the room. Right here, same light on the silk. What is it, silk? I don't know. Damask. And you think it's all black, all one shape, but it's vibrant black. You see that? You see some blue black and some green black and some and look at the different skin tones. Of course, Madame X powdered herself, so that probably has a different why that's like that. So here is Clotilde, who is Sargent's, no, I'm Sorolla's wife. And here's Emma, who is Zorn's wife. So they're probably in the house and they want to paint, and their wives are reading the paper, so they set up their easel and they paint them. Very common thing to paint somebody reading. Not watching YouTube. You know, I did have a little boy that I painted and he watched Harry Potter, which was okay, but they moved, the eyes moved. So, okay, Joaquín Sorolla, Sargent. So remember the Velázquez painting when Velázquez is looking over the thing? Sorolla has put himself in like Velázquez. And the intensity of his gaze is the same as the intensity of his photograph. But you look at the different reds, but you can see they're both so influenced by, and the composition is so familiar. This is a painting, I never saw this painting before until I started working on this. It's in a private collection. It's the Werthmeyer family. Sargent probably did 8 paintings of the family, different people in the family, but it's a beautiful painting. Okay, I better move on. Okay, this is a Zorn, this is a Sorolla painting. Why do I show this painting? It's interesting because Susan was just talking about tough times. This is, this won an award. It is probably one of the most heartbreaking paintings. It is the most heartbreaking painting Sorolla ever painted. And it won an award in the salon. So this is a priest and he's taking these young boys down in Valencia to swim. It's a very, very large painting. And I just love it. And it also gives the artist really an ability to play with light and dark and play with anatomy. But the light of the children in the water and the boys did when they were young in Spain, they swam naked in the water. So, and then how they're outlined by the blue of the ocean, they're just really standing out in the light. I just love this painting. So this is a painting I've never seen either, and it's at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, but it's in the vaults. And this is a Sargent painting of Padre Sebastiano, who Sargent met when he was over in Italy, and he was a botanist. So all these, I know you can't see it, but it's seeds and plants and everything that he's studying. But I love the black, and I love the intimate scene of just somebody at their craft. This is a Sorolla painting, believe it or no, sorry. I thought this was a Zorn painting, but this is a Sargent painting. So you can see how similar it is. And I'm not sure who the artist is, but the person that he's painting is, but it's a friend of his. But I love it because you can see how this hand is silhouetted against the dark of the palette, the composition, and the painter is in action. Which getting that action, this is not something for the light of heart. That's very, very difficult. And the drapery, everything falls naturally. Artists just paint each other's a lot. This is a Zorn painting, and it's in a brewery. Told you he was his father was a brewmaster. But I could talk about these paintings so much, but look at how the spots of red leads your eye right around the canvas. A good painter can direct your eye all the way around the canvas. They are telling you how to look at the thing, and it also settles you down so you're not falling off the edge of the canvas, or there's something like that's disturbing you, which is another subject. But they use that to direct their eye right around the canvas. And this is a Zorn painting. I think he's a chemist. All the gaze is down to his hands. But what settles you with the painting? What anchors you? It's vertical, right? And yeah, when you look at it, like say you look at Edward Hopper, you could translate this into a Hopper. You could also translate this into a like a modern painting, as with shapes and I'm losing the name of the artist, but okay. And harmony. The harmony of the softness of the grays and everything that comes around. Now, so we're going to go outside, and on the right is a Zorn painting, believe it or not. When they travel to Tunisia and Capri, to paint outdoors and, to paint these wonderful lights. And that's a Sargent sketch on the left. Went to Morocco, just for the different light.
So the Sargent's on the left.
Oops,
Go back to it. Which is which? Is it Sargent on the right?
Zorn,
Or Zorn?
Sargent. I know. I was gonna do a little game, but I don't have time for that. So, who do you think that is? Fate.
Well, it says Zorn.
That's Sargent. Oh, did it? Okay, everybody probably, well, I don't know if they're been. This is an early huge Sargent painting, very, very famous. Talk about light and dark, and look at how, now this is an interior, so the drama of them their shadows are being thrown up against the wall, that's called the cast shadow, and those cast shadows have to be really distinct. And then you have your little bit of lights hitting the touch of the guitar. You don't need hyper realism up there, because then it will draw your eye right up there. And it will be, feel it. It moves your eye right around the canvas. Even her arm is telling you which direction to go into. They're leading you right back to her. So Sorolla, who was probably had much more familiarity with flamenco, and Sargent. Because it's such a great subject matter. You know, I was just in Sevilla last year, and unfortunately I was sick and missed the flamenco day thing, but that's just what would inspire something. So, all right, then we go to Sargent, and the reason there's some similarity to these two. I'm sorry, this is not Sargent. This is so thank you, Sorolla. Leisure activity.
Yeah, we just.
Now, this is a Sargent I did, and that's a Sorolla. This one, I love this painting. It's so beautiful. What she's doing is she's holding her thing over because she's taking the vapors. Down here, they're burning like incense or vapors, or I don't know what would it be, somebody that would be more familiar with that. But that's what she's doing. She's taking the vapors. She's being, this is actually a young girl and a young boy, and he's helping her wrap up after a swim.
See her in
Yeah. Some of these guys, we drew that one in my drop in drawing class couple Saturdays ago. All right, who is it?
Sargent.
Zorn.
Well, it could be either one, but it is a Zorn. So when like I look at that purple, I'm like, that's a mixed black, okay, red and blue. And then you might tame it down with a little yellow ochre, and that's about mixing canvas. That's this is my favorite Sorolla, because I saw it when I was in at London, and a couple years ago when they had a show on Sorolla, and that is huge. It is such an impactful painting because it's so big, and it's this white Clotilde and one of his children. It looks so comfortable. All right here, Zorn. Sargent, now that's a watercolor, so I'm cheating a little bit, but I wanted to see the fabric and Sorolla. That's a Sargent, but it's very, it's a beach scene. Very similar to some, Homer must have been looking at that too.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorolla, Sargent, no, sorry. Zorn, Sorolla. Look at the way that water is painted. If you don't understand how, you have to, it's called the anatomy of the landscape. You understand, like a fisherman or a boat person understands the water, how the water works in order to place those lights appropriately. You have to know the anatomy of the water, the anatomy of the waves. Robert Louis Stevenson by Sargent. They were good friends. That's his wife.
Not going well.
Well, no, she's wrapped up in something that they probably traveled with. They might be in an Arab country right now. When he's painting this, they travel quite a bit. I love it. It's long and lean. It's another interior that by Sargent. Himself. That's not an easy painting to do.
Oh, right.
And then we have Sorolla. Sargent on the left, Dr. Posey. That's a self-portrait of Zorn on the right.
Got fat.
He became corpulent. And look at the reds, mixing those reds. Sargent had to put in something brighter into his red. Zorn kept it laid down a little bit, right?
Beautiful.
And when you look at those separately, you're going to think that's an electric orange on Zorn, but then when you look at Dr. Posey, he is a very flamboyant gynecologist. he has a fascinating story, and I think there's a book written about him, Dr. Posey. I mean, he really is a fascinating individual. He was a good guy. Just, he was really, yeah. Anyway, it's a really fun book. Zorn. This is Sargent's portrait of his teacher, Corrales Duran. Brian, who is this on Zorn? I can't remember.
Can't remember the name.
Anyway, look at the lights on the sleeves. It's just an arrow, right? An arrow white, and the sleeves on Corrales Duran. But you can see the similarities in the mixing of the colors here and up here. Okay, Zorn, Sorolla. What I love about this Sorolla is that red.
Yeah.
That red out of his lips and down here on the but that's very similar portrait setting. And you know, well, I won't get on the subject of portraits. So but you know, the setting's got to be interesting, right? How come there's so many that aren't so interesting? You know, I mean, this is this is like painted, the sitters are like looking alive. But okay. Sargent, Isabella Stewart Garden, or no, she's the same as Madame X, like Gautreau, and then that's a Zorn. I don't know why I found similarities to these two paintings, but I think you can see that. Okay, that's a Zorn. I think that's a.
It's another Zorn.
Oh, you can see it's okay. That's a Zorn. But you can, yeah. But you know, having him hold his cane and this one glove on and one glove off, one hand. What is that all about? I have seen that in paintings all the way back.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it gives the artist an opportunity to paint the anatomy of the hand and the glove. So also, if the other hand was painted in there, what would your eye do? You'd be pulling. So it's all about the composition. He's leading you right back around to the face, which is another key to portraiture. Everything leads you around to the portrait. It's composition. Okay, so here we go into Sorolla, and I'm going to talk. Okay, Sorolla, big painting, painted on life. I'm going to show you a picture of him painting outdoors. You know, Sargent and he had men servants that went out with them and put up their canvases and roped them off and made them secure so they could paint really big at the beach. This is a Sargent horse painting I've never seen before. Okay, Zorn, Sorolla. This is one of the murals at the Hispanic Society in New York City, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. But Zorn ended up moving back after his career. He was at the Chicago World's Fair. He did some portraits of presidents here in the States, and then he moved back to his hometown, Mora, in Sweden, for the remainder of his life, even though he still traveled. And Zorn's etchings are very well known. So I want to show this etching of Zorn's, the horse. So I wanted to show you some charcoals, some things that are preliminary or stand on their own as pieces of artwork before somebody might go into a painting. Or if they only have 2 hours to draw a model or somebody that's sitting for them, this would be what they do. Sargent pencil, a Sargent charcoal. This was from the show at the Morgan Library right before COVID. Isn't that beautiful?
Beautiful.
I think this is Lady Astor, Lady Astor, I don't know, but you know, I do know that there's a couple Sargents on our island, but this just beautiful. So artists use what's called a kneaded eraser. Kneaded like bread. came from Sargent using bread to take away out of the charcoal off the thing. Now this is a Zorn, but similar in character. And then, you know, I think Zorn used the same model for a number of different etchings. I don't know if this is his wife, Emma. It doesn't really look like her. I think that could be same model. I love that. This is called In the Omnibus. You know, getting back to just when they got to a point where they didn't have to worry about finances, they went back and painted just life. You know, they just, I mean, they still took commissions on and everything, but they painted life, you know. And then then you go into like, you know, the Ashcan School in New York City, where it's all about getting out on the streets and painting the tenements and everything. Okay, go down another road. Okay, so I love this Zorn. It's a veiled woman. To be able to draw that veil takes a lot of skill. And then here's a model looking at the painting that Zorn is executing, and he did a sketch etching of it. Okay, so I don't think we have time for these videos, not all of them. This is about Sargent's charcoal. If we have time, we'll go back, I think. And you can find this online too, but oh, like I said. This is at the Morgan Library, so I'll just there. And
John Singer Sargent, Portraits in Charcoal, sheds new light on an important but often overlooked aspect of the artist's work. I'm Robin Oslison, Curator of Prints and Drawings at the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery,
it started.
and I'd like to share with you some of the highlights of the exhibition. Sargent's international fame as a portraitist brought him into the orbit of some of the most influential men and women of his day.
Who's that?
In 1907, when Sargent renounced portrait painting and began making charcoal drawings instead, the range of his subjects expanded to include a fascinating mixture of artists, musicians, actors, writers, and political figures. Many of these people were what we would call influencers today. They were the trendsetters who shaped contemporary taste, shifted politics, and challenged social conventions.
I'm gonna move on because we have so much to talk about. All right, and then here's another little video of Zorn. Let's do a little bit, so you can just kind of see.
Welcome to Gallery and Music.
I hope this. Anyway.
Anders Zorn, 1860 to 1920, was a Swedish artist known for his exceptional skills as a painter, etcher, and sculptor. He was one of the most prominent artists of his time and gained international recognition for his work. Zorn was born in Mora, Sweden, and showed an early interest in art. He studied at the Royal Swedish Academy of Fine Arts in Stockholm, and later traveled to Paris, where he studied under some of the leading artists of the time.
That could be right up
Zorn's
the dock down there, right? That's it. So, back to Velázquez, the Rokeby Venus. The reason I showed this is, well, there's a long story about it, big slash and everything during the women's suffrage movement during the turn of the 20th century. I've told this story before, but somebody came in as a protest and slashed their painting, started slashing the painting, and the guards had just waxed the floor, or somebody had just waxed the floor, and the guards ran over and fell on the floor. Couldn't get in there in time, but it's been completely restored. So there's a Sorolla.
Goodness.
Yeah, I'll go back a little bit.
Huh. Oh.
Okay, this is quick, but I do want to show you because this is, has anybody been to the Hispanic Society? They just reopened after a 4-year renovation in New York City, up on 140th, I think. Well, you have to go because it's a magnificent. There is a room twice this size filled with the Sorolla murals that he was commissioned by the owner, the first director of the museum, Huntington, who poured a lot of money into that museum, brought Sorolla over to do these murals, which are extraordinary. Philip de Montebello fundraised. He was used to be the head of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He fundraised to have the Hispanic Society rehauled and renovated, and it has now reopened. And I've arranged for study there with, take students there for November 4th and 5th and 6th to study the murals. So I just want to give you a really quick little,
Susan Collins was the
well, we can't look at that. How do I skip? There we go. Thanks, Kate.
You know, when I applied to be the director of the Hispanic Society, I was asked to write a paper about why museum. What's the point of museums? The point of museum is you.
That's all I have to say. I think that was a great thing. Did you see how big they are?
Yeah, great.
I mean, how did they do all this work? This is a sketch for one of them. But each of those big murals in the Hispanic Society is a different region of Spain. So it's an extraordinary place to go. This is one of these, this is one of the regions of Spain. I don't know all, you know, but different, love this painting. I think they're knights, it's a, with the, what's that, Elks Club or something? I don't know. Matadors, the bullfights. So where would that be? Pamplona, right. Samantha, you should know all this stuff. Pamplona. Fish down at the sea. It's another mural there. Okay, so we're into some nudes with Zorn. Children. So this is Isabella Stewart Gardner, painted by Zorn. He met her and painted her. They became very, very good friends. She's just, as in the evening, she's just coming out of a darkened room into the light. I think she was kind of dramatic, but there she is. But she was a great supporter of the arts. And also very good friends with John Singer Sargent. Says, there is a little study of Sargent did of Isabella Stewart Gardner. And then this is his painting of her. Very much more, she picked the background, she picked a good one, you know, it kind of replicates her, the way she's standing, yeah. These two, okay, on the left is Sorolla, and on the right is Sargent. This is the huge Sorolla. And that's another thing that's just been reopened is the Sorolla Museum in Madrid, which is in North Madrid. And I think it's been closed for almost 4 years. I went there last year thinking it was going to be open, and they, you know, of course, everything takes longer. So, but it's his home, and they've, I went there about 30 years ago, but now they've expanded it into a museum and his home, so you can see where he worked, the fountains that were outside. It's a beautiful home. And then also the whole museum experience. Okay, so this is Mrs. Potter Palmer from Chicago, when Zorn was in Chicago. They became good friends. I think it's a very odd painting, but it's.
Looks like Cinderella.
Well, I segue because I'm a friend of mine, Lynn Phantom, and I are having a book published about the women of Acadia. One of them, I think, is Mrs. Potter Palmer. That's coming out next year. So she gave money to the park. I think she did a lot for the park. And then that's a Zorn on the right. Okay, here we are, Sorolla painting outdoors. I know artists that used to paint out in Santa Fe, and they had little trucks built for them, like little trailers. So one side was a huge window, so they could go out into the desert and paint it from a huge window and be protected. And I think Winslow Homer built something like this to go down to the shore and paint.
Wow.
That's Sorolla drawing. This is called sight size drawing. where the drawing on the canvas is the same size as the model.
Wow.
And he's probably stepping back and looking and coming forward and drawing. This is Zorn out in the field. Sorolla painting that big paint. You see how big that painting is with the horse and the boy? And then I think that's also Zorn. There's Sargent painting the mother and daughter, side size. You see that kind of? And Sargent in his studio with Madame X. There's the painting. Now, this is, I put this up, this is Sorolla and a Sargent. And you can't do this unless you understand this. Does that make sense? This brushwork is so right on, and it's so beautiful, you know, it's brushwork, but it's just so full of life. I can look at that painting forever. This is one of the most beautiful paintings I've ever seen by Sargent. It's in a private collection, but fortunately it was at the Tate Britain a few years ago during the Sargent show, and I got to see it up close. I just love this painting. I've never seen it before. It's a Zorn. Okay, so here is Grover Cleveland, drawn by Zorn. So they shared, I know. So they shared a presidential, and there's William Howard Taft, painted by Zorn, etched by Zorn, drawn by Zorn. There's William Howard Taft, painted by Zorn. I'm not a fan of that painting.
Wow.
But this is Teddy Roosevelt painted by Sargent. And if you know the story, you know, Teddy Roosevelt never stopped. He was kind of a hyper, you know, always running around. And Sargent went to the White House to paint his portrait, and they're trying to decide where Teddy Roosevelt was going to sit. And all of a sudden, Roosevelt came down the stairs, put his hand on the balustrade, and according to legend, Sargent said, "Stop right there." That is the painting. So I wanted to show you some of the hands of these guys have painting and how painterly they are, but how accurate. Fingers are the edge. So when you touch your fingers and you have your flesh on your palm and everything, and your fingers, why is the nose and the ears and the fingers always warm in a painting? Because it's closer to the blood is closer to the outside of the finger and the skin. So that's why you have them a little warmer.
This one's fine.
Okay, this is the end of the lecture, but I have never seen this Sargent painting before. I absolutely love it. So we're gonna go to my lap. I can't help.
High on a hill was a lonely goat herd, lay, hoodlay, hoodlay, hee-hoo. Loud was the voice of the lonely goat herd, lay, hoodlay, hoodloo. Folks in a town that was quite remote heard, lay, hoodlay, hoodlay, hee-hoo. Lusty and clear from the goat herd's throat heard, lay, hoodlay, hoodloo. Oh, oh, lady, hoodlay, oh, 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 lady, hoodlay, oh, oh, lady, hoodlay, oh, lady, hoodlay, oh, lay. Martyr! Martyr! Gretel the prince! A prince on the bridge of a castle moat heard, lay, odelay, odelay, hee-hoo. Men on a road with a load to tote heard, lay, odelay, odeloo. Men in the midst of a table-d'out heard, lay, odelay, odelay, hee-hoo. Men drinking beer with a foam afloat heard, lay, odelay, odeloo.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. Few minutes for questions, if anybody has a question.
Did Sargent ever do the charcoals as a prep for a painting?
Yeah, yeah.
Makes it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, little painting, what is the background?
It's a bar. You know, it's a.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Do we know if they ever took photographs and did it?
Zorn took photographs, yeah, yeah. Yeah, he took photograph, beautiful photo, mostly of the nudes out on the ocean. And he would do his etchings from them, but his practice was so, it wasn't, he used what his knowledge was from life when he did the etchings. Okay. And then, of course, we came into where a lot of people use photographs, but they're a tool for the painting. In my opinion.
In your opinion, what?
In my opinion, yeah, they should be subjugated to the overall painting.
Who do you think is the best of the three?
Oh,
No.
who do you think is the best of the three? I wouldn't get into that fight. They're all good.
You would be haunted.
Yeah, I mean, if I went to a museum and it was all Zorns, it would be Zorn that day. If I went to a museum and it was all Soroyas, it would be Sorolla that day. If I went, that's exactly, and I strongly recommend going to Madrid. Barcelona doesn't want us anymore, so I'm going, but see, I am going to the Hispanic Society. If anybody wants to join me on 4th, 5th, and 6th, I don't know, you can send me an email. And get me I'll get you on the list and then I'll let you know when I'm going to New York. So, any other questions? Thank you.